Tanky here. There's your global silence coming out just in time as Yoku blinked forward looking for the Echo Slam, but the timing there from G perfect. And now Yoku could be in trouble, running himself away from FNG. FNG with the telekinesis, Lil getting himself the hell out of there. Phobos with the BKB on the retreat. Illidan just chasing down Yoku. Fate Bolt to the back there from FNG to bring down the third hero of this fight from the side of Empire. And this is Resolution down as well. No buyback on the SF for 70 seconds. This may very well be it. They're going to lose Always Want to Fly. He died back there on the Shadow Demon. Silent with the Searing Chains, heading himself back to base. But he's only got a low hard dance to help him here. It's just the two of them on the defensive. Fortification will come out, but FNG going forward with the telekinesis. Call down onto low hard dance. Lina die backing as well. Silent to fall. 36-11. GG. VP take game one with incredible fashion. And Virtus Pro just playing at another level that Empire just didn't seem to be able to keep up with.
I really love the silencer this game. I mean, when you start off with 3 kills, it's pretty hard to have a bad game, right? Like, G got first blood and then 2 other kills in middle lane straight after the fact. Started off extremely strong, never lost momentum. A lot of things for Empire this game just didn't really work out the way that they wanted. Yoku was so low level for such a long time. He wasn't able to sit in the off lane. The first couple of smoke ganks, one of them got revealed. They get global silenced on as soon as they try to initiate onto the Spirit Breaker with Shadow Demon. Then they get counter ganked and die. Like, everything just seemed to be going favorably for VP from the get-go, and unfortunately for Empire, they do lose the first game.
Yeah, it certainly seemed, as you said, just the start and the fact that when you look at both of their lineups, they're definitely lineups that kind of excel on getting a good start at the beginning and staying on top. And the fact that VP did get an incredibly good start. You just look at the two cores, the Gyro and the Silence, the G and Illidan. Pretty much flawless performances. 9 kills, 0 deaths, 17 assists for your Gyro, 13 kills, 2 deaths, 4 assists from G. Fantastic performance from VP, but of course this is a best of 3 here tiebreaker, so don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen, because game 2, I'm sure Empire will be doing their best to strike back. Now, over to the desk to hear what they've got to say about a pretty incredible game 1 performance from VP.
That is an excellent way to put it. I mean, VP came out swinging at the very beginning of the game, even before we reached the minute mark, and they kept on swinging until the very end.
Yeah, like they pointed out, the mid lane went really, really well. I think when it comes to the overall aggression and execution, it seemed like the silencer, once again, being a solid pick for VP.
Yeah.
A lot of the times when Empire were looking for some sort of initiation, the global silence just shut them down really hard. It's a great pick against Ember Spirit too, as Winder pointed out, because if you cast Last Word on Ember, he's really restricted. So the way he engages into a fight is with a spell. He casts the Remnant and you get silenced. Mm-hmm. Or if you use Sleight of Fist to try to combine with Change, you get silenced. And then in addition to that, if you then somehow manage to not get silenced by a Last Word and you do engage, you can just get globaled when you're in the middle of the team and no one can really help you out. So VP, once again, showing why Silencer is a big pick for them. They made it work very well. And yeah, as another thing the casters pointed out, the cores of VP really brought their A game.
Yeah. Happy they went with that silencer. And they kind of show a bit that doesn't have to be Illidan. Mm-hmm. Him and G both seem to pull it off very well. He outclassed Shadow Fiend in that matchup. I also liked a bit of synergy, which they did talk about briefly, but, you know, working with Spirit Breaker, having that global presence so that when he does commit to a charge, he followed up with the global silence, and he can get away with a good nether strike without being, you know, stopped. It's really nice.
Yeah, that's true. Winter, what is your assessment of VP and, on the other side, Empire?
I mean, I said during the draft, one of the few key things is whoever has the support that makes the successful rotations to help the middle lane first is going to have a huge edge.
Yeah.
And in this game, the Tusk made a very early, I think it was during the first or second creep wave, he made a very early rotation towards the middle lane. He secured the kill on the Shadow Fiend and the Shadow Demon. I think they got 2 early kills and the whole lane was over for the Shadow Fiend. He couldn't even go near the... Every time he comes for a creep wave, he takes harass from the Last Word and the Glaives. I mean, the lane was just awful for the Shadow Fiend from start until like even 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's surprising to hear that because generally, I mean, that's what we always said kind of was the advantage of getting that Shadow Fiend on the Radiant side. It's like, oh, well, if one thing slips up, you can climb back in. But VP made sure that option wasn't there.
CIS Dota is not as forgiving. So.
Yeah, it definitely did.
What was the kill? It was 3-0 at like what?
Before a minute. It was like 50 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, though, we're saying Shadow Fiend had a really hard lane and he was struggling. Mm-hmm. He still had about the same net worth as the Silencer.
That is true.
Minute I think 12 or 15 or something. But that's not what Shadow Fiend is supposed to. Like, that's the problem.
Imagine if that gang didn't happen. What would have? The Shadow Fiend would have been massive.
Right.
So it was really crucial for them to make sure that the Shadow Fiend had a bad start. He had to spend a lot of time to come back. Even though he, like Sim mentioned, he got back on equal footing with the Silencer. But if a Shadow Fiend has equal footing with a Silencer, I personally, as a Silencer, wouldn't have any issues with that, because I feel Shadow Fiend is a hero that you have to get ahead. Yes. And if you're even on the on even footing with the Silencer, it's obviously better for the Silencer, since in team fight, Silencer does more with the ultimate, and he does pure damage as well. So I feel in that regard, VP are really happy about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely sounds like it. We'll take a quick look at just the later portion of the game here. VP, again, just closing things out against Empire, and like you guys said, I mean, it wasn't as forgiving at all, and VP started things very strong. And overall, I mean, just every fight, it just looked pretty brutal coming out from VP. They made sure they hit everything like they needed to.
That was like the least timid high ground push ever from what I saw right there. It's like, it's time to go, boys, and they just Spirit Breaker charge right on in there. Now, it looked like the Tier 3 had already been taken down. That certainly helps, but having that call down, having these bruisers between Spirit Breaker and Tusk kind of just roll into the base really kind of, you know, it threw Empire off quite a bit.
Empire made it a little bit too easy for VP on this final push, I think. Aloha Dance was caught completely out of position near the entrance of the base. After that, Shadow Demon gets scared that he's getting jumped on, so he self-disrupts, which gives them 2.5 seconds to react. Oh, there's a Shadow Demon, let's just kill him too.
Right.
And I think they didn't even use Global for those 2 kills, or maybe they did, but it looked like there was a silence coming out after. So, all things considered, Empire probably don't make that hold anyway, but it's a sign of weakness in that situation that, you know, a lot of the stronger teams in this tournament, when they're in a base holding situation like that, the only hero who gets exposed there is the Shadow Fiend, because he's the one who has the tankiness to actually survive getting engaged on. And if he can draw out a global silence and still manage to fight, it allows them to actually get a shot at getting back.
Yeah, so there's game 1. Of course, it is a best-of-3 series, but just from what we saw in game 1, it looks like VP's not willing to let that momentum go anytime soon. What do you guys think?
I think they have to prioritize more on their lanes. Like, when we talk about Ember is really weak in the lane. So
for Empire, yeah.
He was up against Tusk plus Spirit Breaker, and he just had a really hard time, and he got even, I think, killed once or twice in the lane. I mean, you can't really pick Ember and just like, early game, okay, we're going to do alright against this type of pressure lane that Virtus Pro have. I mean, I think you have to pick it in the sense that you have to make sure that the early game for the Ember goes okay. Like, at least the other lanes has to go well too. Like, the Shadow Fiend didn't have a hard time. Ember didn't have a... I mean, the Shadow Fiend had a hard time, the Ember had a hard time. So, 2 of the main cores already have a very bad early game. I feel like what Empire could have maybe looked to fix this game is probably go for much more early game dominating supports, or something that helps the cores more in the lane, or big cores that have better laning phase.
Yeah. Now, also something we saw in the draft was, of course, the Axe Ban came out against Empire, but then the silence was left open. Do you think Empire's going to take that as a mistake and say, all right, we just can't let that go through, it's too much of a chance?
Depending on what they go for, if they see that maybe this could be like a resolution Storm Spirit kind of a game, then yeah, don't let that silencer get through. So I guess if it's something that could easily shut down their lineup, they would have to think about that.
All right. I mean, that is something we discussed earlier, not just about pocket picks, but of course, how do you react to something you just lost and it's not that common? Do you just go ahead and ban it? Does that show a little bit of weakness that you've definitely been a little bit flustered from game 1? There's a lot going on there, but Empire, you saw that obviously it's been a long day for them by this point. But again, so much on the line. I mean, going upper bracket or lower bracket makes a huge difference, even if you don't get a choice in your opponent. If you go into the upper bracket here, they are only fighting for that 4th seed, but that is a massive difference. And of course, for VP, we saw them too. I mean, they looked a little bit exhausted. They were like, all right, okay, we got one game through. We got to get another one done. And they look like they're ready to jump into game 2 on the side of Virtus Pro. Empire just making sure they review a couple last-minute things before they jump into the draft for game 2.
I want to say what it seems like in these games is, based on the very small sample of games we've had with Silencer, it seems like such a good response to teams that run 1 or 2 defensive supports, because they don't put a lot of pressure on the lanes early with ganks. So Silencer, who could technically have a very weak laning stage mid if he just gets ganked a couple of times, doesn't really have that problem here. And then when it comes to the mid-game team fights, the defensive supports, they are always playing reactionary. They're not the ones opening. I mean, with Shadow Demon, you can open with a disruption, but they didn't pick him for aggressive disruptions here. They wanted to, well, to an extent, maybe if they could combo it with Lina in the lane, etc., but in the mid-lane portions of the game, they want to use it as a counterplay. And Silencer just removes the counterplays. So if you're going to give away the Silencer, I think you need to have a lineup that takes more initiative, so that Global Silence has to be used defensively. Whereas in this game, I think every single time that I can remember seeing, Virtus.pro used it as a way of killing.
Yes.
And it's a long cooldown. So if you force them out to try to protect your cores from ganks, then all of a sudden, it's kind of similar to what we talked about with like Chaotic Offering on Warlock, where if you use that and all you get is a kill and no objective, it's a very long cooldown. There's a lot of space in the map to take advantage of it. Same with Global. You protect a hero from a gank, cool, you saved one hero. What are you going to do the next 2.5 minutes?
Yeah, that's a good point. Of course, in Game 2, also sides being switched now. Winter, do you think we'll see VP just trying to swap things up and saying, all right, let's just make sure we secure this 2-0, or being a little bit comfortable because they are 1-0 and they won in a dominating fashion?
I think they will probably just stick back to what they want to play, like more aggression and more ganks towards, again, target the mid lane.
More aggression.
You want to get the mid lane going for G. You want to make sure that he gets a very good start and he's going to be able to, like the last time round, control and dominate the whole pace of the game. Being on Radiant's side, maybe you want to prioritize some other heroes. For example, the Shadow Fiend, which didn't work out for Empire the last time round. But there are definitely a lot of options that they can actually go for here. I think TA sometimes could also work on the Radiant side because you can actually do the Ancient stacking much easier and go for like Ancient clearing and supports rotating in whatnot to share the experience of that. So I feel definitely like they would just prioritize on getting their early game going and making sure that the middle lane is their top priority.
Yeah, I mean, you see more aggression. I mean, after watching the first 5 minutes of that last game, I was pretty blown away. But of course, if they want to secure it, they're going to have to give it their all. And like you mentioned, of course, in Game 1, we just see that TA being banned in the second phase. But like you said, if they shift that priority a little bit, maybe they get to pick that up. Of course, we might even see some changes in the first phase of the ban. Both teams all getting settled. For game number 2, you can see Empire. I mean, we're not seeing much emotion, but there's definitely tension because so much rides on the line here. And I'm actually surprised to see VP so relaxed. Even if you're up 1-0, I mean, you start losing here, it could get pretty angsty.
In a way, I didn't get the relaxed vibe from them after the game was over. It was like, you know, they win the game, and the first thing FNG does is get out of his chair and just go sit down on the floor.
Yeah.
He just went over, sat down. He was like, it seemed like he wanted to like just focus, calm down, and not get too stressed out by the whole thing and how important it is.
Right.
We saw Illidan come over and join him, and he seemed like he had a little bit more of a smile on his face.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can read as much into it as we want. We don't know what they were talking about and what happened.
Of course.
But it definitely didn't seem like he was just, okay, another day at the office. This game was easy. Let's go next.
Yeah.
He definitely seems like he knows there's a lot on the line, and he wants to try to stay focused. And you know, if you get out of your chair to sit on the floor, you definitely need
That,
to,
of course,
to calm
yeah.
down.
Yeah. After that game, I'm
Yeah.
sure there were a lot of emotions
a very
running.
tense game for them.
Well, all players ready for a draft in Game 2. Can VP secure it? Can they just make sure they maintain that 4th seed in Group B? Or Empire, are they going to continue that challenge, push it to the very last game? We're about to find out. It is a best of 3, ladies and gentlemen, to determine the fate of Group B. Upper bracket or lower bracket. Lots of changes, of course, in the prize pool. You get a second chance if you're in the upper bracket. Many differences here. And the SF ban right away by Empire. They didn't have much success, but they don't want to risk it. They want it jumping over to VP. That will open up at least a couple other options here for both teams.
I think